I love it. I love the story. And the message is very subtle today, isn't it? There's some quite broad but very subtleties in there. But I thought I'd start with two dad jokes today. And the first one being, what do you call a dog who meditates? A werewolf. And the second joke is really around, where do dads store their dad jokes?
I know the answer.
In the data bank.
Look, everyone's giggling. Yeah. I feel like now I should start the recording.
Yeah. I love it. So anyway, I thought we'd being the title of this is the infinite. So really, what is the definition of infinite? And then it's limitless or endless. And the subtlety of that story is that Master didn't want to identify with, or didn't want people to identify with, something that wasn't limitless. And that was his body and his presence. And it talked about in the first place that Jesus Christ, he was crucified really by everyone. And because everyone tried to identify him as this human being, and not the infinite spirit behind him. So, that's that analogy of the wave. The great ocean creates this wave, and everyone is another little wave, and they're identifying with that wave in their own view of their own little wave. So it's kind of like an interesting thing. And Yogananda didn't want, or Jesus didn't want people to identify with that. He didn't want, so if he identified with the I, meaning I am this wave who is connected to the infinite, so I am this infinite, then everyone would try and do that. And it makes me laugh, as
dad jokes do.
As dad jokes do. But, if you think about how we go about life, we're doing this all the time, aren't we? We have this image of perfection, or we have this great idealism, absolutely. And it's like we could be out in nature. How often of us do we think, oh geez, I'm going to have my perfect meditation, when the room is perfect or the environment's perfect, and then we actually sit there in that perfection and go, yeah, well, it kind of could be perfect because it's the way our minds work, isn't it? Well, yeah, it could be perfect, but I reckon it could be a half a degree warmer. And that incense that's burning, I don't think it's quite right for this perfection. I don't think it's
achoo.
And then we start sneezing, or I laugh anyone that's taken that trip to Babaji's cave, and we all think, oh, I'd love to be a cave yogi and sit there and meditate for hours. And then by the time you walk up to the cave and get in the cave, and the cave's dark and hard and rigid, and you sit down and you're thinking, oh, geez, I wish I bought my cushion. I wish I bought lots of cushions. And then I wish that this. So constantly we're living life, aren't we, with perfection in mind, but we're not actually reaching that. And that's that story, isn't it, of this wave, because we're identifying with a wave, we are then trying to create the perfect wave with whatever's in front of us. And, if you think about that true reflection of crucifixion, it's that we're constantly crucifying what's in front of us because we're seeking perfection. And we look at the world, and just look at how many people come on this path, how many people join this path, and they're often, you'll hear that people join this path not seeking God. Swami himself talked about, he wasn't seeking God, he was seeking truth. And he was constantly throughout his childhood seeking truth, first through astrology, then through the creative arts, then through something else. And then lots of people join this path for different reasons. A lot of people do it because, I'm going to meditate because I found out who my true nature is. And you think about that, they're all things that keep coming back to our mind, just constantly working over everything that we do, trying to, I'll find my true nature, and then that will give me the best place to meditate perfectly, and then I'll find divine greatness or, perfection, because when I know when I have my best database where I find who I actually am. And it's not until we start recognizing and coming along this journey that we start really finding out that, we want to be that ocean. We want to do these things. And I think last week we talked about the I want part. And, we are probably all at that level, and we are trying to move along that we're at that point. I want to be a part of that infinite spirit, rather than I want or I need that in all things. And it reminded of me two chapters that overlap each other in Autobiography of a Yogi. And it's Yogananda's journey. And here he is in perfection. He's found his guru. You would think that he would want to just sit there and be with his guru, and guru would give him everything. But again, his mind was constantly thinking, oh, hold on, if I just get there. And he kept still wanting to go to the Himalayas. And on one of his journeys, he went, and his guru kind of, tried to sway him in different ways, but he still decided to go. So he allowed him to go, and that brought him into the sleepless saint. So on his journey, he hears about this saint, the sleepless saint. And on this journey, he goes, first of all, to find out where he was. Before that, to find out if he could actually go, he went to the teacher that his dad gave him, who knew of this sleepless saint and indicated that he knew where he was. And so he was on this journey, and it was in the before he went to this Tarakshwa shrine, where there was on the altar was just this stone, perfectly round stone. And he went in there, and I love the words that Yogananda used. He said, my own mood at the moment was so austere that I felt disinclined to bow before the stone symbol. God should be sought, I reflected, only within the soul. So he left the temple without genuflection and walked briskly toward the outlying village. And there he sought guidance for where this sleepless saint was. And the direction was go to the end of the road and turn right. So he went to the end of the road and turned right. And now he's out and had to stay overnight, because that's not where he was. He was actually at the end of the road and turned left. And he got this direction and went and found the sleepless saint. And when the sleepless saint basically got to him, he said, the sleepless saint said, I was planning to leave, but your purpose was good, so I waited you. He shook his finger in my astounded face. Aren't you clever to think that unannounced you could pounce on me? That Professor Bahiri had no right to give you my address. So very interesting, wasn't it? He sort of sat there and wasn't quite expecting that. So in consideration of that interaction, basically Yogananda stood there speechlessly. He said, but then he said to him, he said, tell me, where do you think God is? And Yogananda aptly replies, he said, why, he is within me and everywhere. I doubtless looked as bewildered as I felt. All pervading, hey? The saint chuckled. Then why, young sir, did you fail to bow before the infinite in the stone symbol at the Tarakaswa temple yesterday? Your pride caused you the punishment of being misdirected by the passerby who was not bothered by fine distinctions of left and right. Today, too, you had a fairly uncomfortable time of it. So very interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like, we're on this journey. We're doing that constantly, aren't we? We're coming out thinking, yeah, you know what? I could do better, or I can be higher than that, or let's improve on something, and we're all seeking these truths that are within. And then the story goes, he has this infinite story, but there's a passage that the sleepless saints basically tells us, and it's when he has that experience of like expansion, And he's really seeking God. He's really seeking that infinite. And he gets told that, he still has to prepare himself for that. And that's why he has a guru, and that the guru is not in the Himalayas. It's actually back where he is. And one piece of advice that he gives them is, my goodness, you have, Yogananda asks him, because the sleepless saint tells him this story. He says, my goodness, you have meditated for so long and you're unsure of the Lord's favor. I gazed at him in an astonishment. Then what about us poor mortals? So this is someone that's meditated for many, many, many years. He's given him this complete understanding and of where he needs to be. And he said, well, don't you see, my dear boy, that God is eternity itself? So infinite eternity. To assume that one can fully know him by 45 years of meditation is rather a preposterous expectation. Babaji assures us, however, that even a little bit of meditation saves one from dire fear of death and after-death states. Do not fix your spiritual ideal on small mountains, but hitch it to the star of unqualified divine attainment. If you work hard, you will get there. And why I say this story really blends, it blends into the next chapter, which is an experience in cosmic consciousness. And so he's basically saying here, through hard work and meditation and the realization of not trying to fix everything with your conscious mind, not thinking I'm going to get here, but direct your mind into that infinite rather than the journey that's on its way. And I find it kind of interesting, and there's some little nuggets in the next chapter, which is an experience in cosmic consciousness, because he comes back to his master, realizing that, this is the truth. This is where I need to be. This is where I need to grow. I don't need to change what I need to do. And he said, Master, I must have disappointed you by my abrupt departure from my duties here. I thought you might be angry with me. And this next line is a gold nugget for life, and it's something that we can take into whatever we do. He said, no, of course not. Wrath springs only from thwarted desires. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that again. Wrath springs only from thwarted desires. And they're those desires of perfection. There's those desires of seeking outwardly those things. I do not expect anything from others. So imagine if we went about life doing that, not having one expectation of others.
Freedom.
So their actions cannot be in opposition to the wishes of mine. I would not use you for my own ends. I am happy only in your own truth happiness, in your own true happiness. And it's the truth of Ananda. It's the truth of Yogananda's teachings. It's not about my journey. It's about that service, that savor. It's respecting everyone else's journey and helping every journey along that way, not having expectations or placing expectations of my own wishes on anyone else. And that after that experience, he went to meditate and he pulled him back down because his thoughts were going crazy, and actually gave him an experience of samadhi. He gave him that that experience that he was after. And he said, and this kind of describes what this infinite spirit is, and that infinite Jesus Christ. It is the Spirit of God that actively sustains every form and force in the universe, yet he is transcendental and aloof in blissful, uncreated void beyond the worlds of vibratory phenomena. Master explains, saints who realize their divinity, even while in the flesh, know a similar twofold existence. Consciously engaging in earthly work, they yet remain immersed in inward beatitude. The Lord has created all men from the limitless joy of his being, though they are painfully cramped by the body. So it keeps going back to these teachings today, saying, don't identify me as that body. Even though I identify with God, I don't want to say that, because you will then identify me with that body. God nevertheless expects that souls made in his image shall ultimately rise above all sense identification and reunite with him. And there's a couple of words that are really true to this, because after that experience, the breath and the restless mind, the cosmic vision left my permeated permanent lessons. By daily stilling my thoughts, I could win release from the delusive conviction that my body was a mass of flesh and bones, transversing the hard soil of matter. The breath and the restless mind I saw were like storms which lashed the ocean of light into waves of material form, earth, sky, human beings, animals, birds, trees. No perception of the infinite as one light could be had except by calming those storms. So it's calming the breath and the restlessness, because he goes on to say that as often as I silenced the two natural tumults, breath and the mind, I beheld the multitudinous waves of creation melt into one lucent sea, even as the waves of the ocean, their tempest subsiding, serenely dissolved into unity. So however long we are breathing and we are conscious around those things, that's the purpose of this path. It's to find stillness. It's to find that amazing breathlessness and the stillness of mind so that we can identify back with the ocean. And until that point, we're constantly going to keep trying to identify and then relate that identity with everyone else on that experience. And the beautiful part about this chapter, and I won't do it now, but it's one for us to all to be mindful of and keep reading. But that was the point that he said, I wrote in many later years the following poem, which was Samadhi. So it's a good reminder to keep reading Samadhi and keep knowing Samadhi in that relationship. Thank you.
Some beautiful reminders from, Master himself in those words. So thank you for bringing that into today. It's really a great idea and way to share the teachings. So thank you. It makes it all come alive, and you can hear his voice and his sharing when you read that. So one of the things that reminded me of is, if you think about this week, we have the topic is the infinite Christ. So you think of the word infinite, it's limitless. It has no boundaries. It's without measure. It just goes on expanding until eternity. There's no time or space involved because it is limitless. And then you think about what you were sharing about our happiness and how by placing expectations, we are limiting. So the opposite of infinity is limitations. So whenever things are in our days coming up against our feeling of expansion, it's contracting our awareness, and it's tying us to the ego, and it's tying us to the body. It's tying us to this life in this day, time, space. So it's all about that relativity, and we're trying to go beyond that to unity. And so when we do things in our day, too, simple things that we all know, they're in our toolkit. We practice acceptance. We practice gratitude. We practice affirmations like, I vow from this day onwards to be happy under every circumstance. I came from God's joy. I am joy. And you make that your mind's victory call. And the other thing that Jyotish said is, many paths have a mantra. He said, combine Jai Guru with Om Guru, Om Guru. And so you can feel that's here and here, isn't it? It's a mantra for the spiritual eye, and it's a mantra for our heart. So it's purifying emotions, which is stilling the heart, which we know stills the mind. Stilling the mind stills the heart. It's a connection that we constantly have to be vigilant in order to achieve freedom. To be in a state of bliss, the heart is completely still because it is without desire, expectation, limitation, attraction, not attraction, attachment, non-attachment. So to be free, to be able to experience bliss, we must fight. We have to fight this battle to go beyond. So be able to identify with, as Master said, the ocean, but not the drop that becomes a part of something so much greater. And today, I just really felt inspired to talk a little bit about Saint Teresa of Avila, because one of the things that came to my mind when we were studying for this morning was, what is a saint? We all know the quote, "A saint is a sinner who never gave up." That's really powerful. You just remind yourself that when you get a bit hard on yourself. But beyond that definition is the one that I think Jyotish described it in a talk many years ago, but saints are ones who are identified with spirit. They're not like nirvikalpa samadhi realized, but they're sabikalpa samadhi realized. And there's a chant about that. In nirvikalpa samadhi yoga, you will find yourself in yourself. And know thyself is really what you're trying to get to, true unity, instead of ego identified with unity, which is what Davy couldn't go beyond. He was trying to do ego identified with unity, not unity existence, right? That's what Master was trying to help him see or experience. And so when we think of this beautiful example of sainthood, it's those who they live in the spirit. There's many stories of saints, and what kind of sets them apart from just you and I is that they are trying their very best to be constantly communing. So they're maybe feeling of that thou and I, but they're still in a place where they experience spirit throughout their day, and they don't disconnect from that relationship. And Saint Teresa of Avila, which is why we chose her chant today, it was all about going beyond limitation, wasn't it? She was in that chant, let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. That's the battle cry of a saint, telling us exactly the attitudes that we can uphold to be free. And there's many, many beautiful stories that even Master talks about in the Second Coming of Christ books. So if you do have them and you want to go to the index, you can look up Teresa. And he talks about her as examples of what it's like to be beyond dogma, but a saint. So you can imagine Teresa, she was not understood at all by many of the leading figures of the religion in her times, but she went on to create spiritual communities, really. But they were a monastic expression of that, but their purpose was communion, to have that I and thou relationship throughout the entire day. And she was known to go into states of ecstasy where the other nuns would just watch her and think she had left the body, because she was in complete stillness, because no attachment, no desire except love for God. And she could still feel, I love you, God, or Jesus Christ, I adore you, I love you, I'm devoted to you. But what Master said is that if she had been given the Kriya Yoga technique, all of those experiences that she had would have gone straight to unity, because that's the power of the jet airplane route. And that's the joy of living in Dwapara, this age of energy where we can be given the Kriya Yoga technique or this path of Kriya Yoga to attain this freedom, to be able to have the strength to accomplish infinity consciousness, joy consciousness, bliss consciousness that is ever new. And people start to notice, you seem really happy over there. Why are you so happy all the time? And they see you, even if you're not happy all the time, they see you pick yourself up quickly, don't they? They see you maybe get pummeled, but then you get right back up and you don't let it stick, right? So we talked about that last week too. Let it flow off of you like water. And through that, what are we achieving? But we're escaping suffering. That's the other part of this quote. that is what we all want. None of us want to suffer. That's why most people end up on the spiritual path, is because they're like, I am done. I don't want to do this anymore. Help. So every time that we start to get a little bit slack in our spiritual practices, just remind yourself why you're here is to be free. And this is the lifetime where you can do it. We just have to keep going, and we have to keep trying, and we have to stay in that mantra, Jai Guru. That means victory. Victory in this life. Om Guru. With love and with devotion. Jai Guru, Om Guru. So thank you all so much. And we do have some beautiful songs to share with you that really encapsulate the words in music. So this is from our oratorio. Oh.